One of the biggest challenges that the family has is really bridging the gap between the structure that they put in place and how things actually run on a day-to-day basis.
So family offices tend to operate on quite an informal basis based on trust among family members, sometimes even amongst the employees that the family offices employ. Because a lot of these things are unspoken, unsaid rules, so there are certain lines which can be crossed or certain blurred lines which it's difficult for people to follow. And this could lead to disputes.
Today, families are increasingly structuring their affairs in a way that gives them flexibility to cope with geopolitical developments that can change quite quickly.
As family offices become more sophisticated, there are more operational risks. What are the risks that you see today? Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. Today's episode is about the evolving landscape of single family offices in Singapore. Over the last decade, the conversations was about tax incentives, structures, and also setting up. Today's conversation is about governance, succession planning, and also operational resilience. For today's episode, we are joined by two individuals who have worked with family offices and also ultra-high net worth families across the region. First, we have Chun, who is the partner from the private wealth practice WongPartnership. He advises families on wealth structuring, governance, and also succession planning. Welcome, Chun. So today we also have Ying, who has joined us for all the previous episodes. Ying is now from Ascentium Private Client Services. Ying, what has changed so far?
I'm glad that you asked, Bob. Incorp has actually been part of Ascentium Group since 2024, and the group is going through a rebranding and restructuring where different service lines and different offices across different countries are being unified gradually under the Ascentium brand. Now, the group has also reorganized our capabilities into 4 specialized service lines, and one of which is private client services, which is what I'm representing today. In Ascentium Private, we focus specifically on supporting high net worth families. The solution that we provide includes trusts, foundations, private fund structure, tax and residency planning. Now, we also have dedicated local teams across key jurisdictions such as Australia, BVI, Cayman, Hong Kong, Singapore, India, and even UAE. Now, these will allow us to support families with global needs in a more coordinated way.
Thank you, Ying. And to you, thank you for watching us live. If you have any questions, please put it into the chat below. So let's start off, right? So Singapore has grown tremendously over the years. So first question to you, Chun, what makes Singapore attractive?
So Singapore continues to be attractive for various reasons, including political stability, legal certainty and the strength of the legal system in Singapore, the financial institutions in Singapore and how connected Singapore is to the global market, as well as a well-developed ecosystem of service providers and advisors who can assist families with structuring their wealth and succession planning. So people are no longer viewing Singapore just as a financial hub. People are also viewing Singapore as a place for them to settle down, for Singapore to act as their wealth hub for the next generation.
Thank you, Chun. So with recent geopolitical developments, right, we have previously the trade wars, and now we have the conflict in the Middle East, right? So Ying, how does this affect family office structures?
Today, families are increasingly structuring their affairs in a way that gives them flexibility to cope with the geopolitical developments that can change quite quickly. So they are diversified across jurisdictions and asset classes. They have multiple banking relationships, and they also ensure that they are not overly depending on single countries or single system. So ultimately, it's about building resilience and also flexibility to manage things like capital control, restrictions on movement of the capital, and as well as tax changes.
Thank you, Ying. So these are very uncertain times. So for Chun Wai, right, how do you see this affect family office behavior?
So we are seeing family offices focus on governance and operational resilience. So there have been discussions about putting into place measures to account for situations where a key decision maker is unavailable, putting into place policies that the family and or people whom they employ can follow through in running a family office. And there's also a greater demand for institutionalized competence and fiduciary services whom they can trust in order to guide the family as there is a change in the reins which are being handed over to the next generation.
So what is your observation on the Singapore family office market? Do you see more professionalism?
Yes, definitely. So just to set some context to this, prior to the COVID times, or at least during the COVID times, there was a surge in the number of family offices in Singapore. I think it was fivefold or something up to 2024. At that point in time, the focus was a lot about setting up in Singapore, coming to Singapore, the tax incentives in Singapore, and Singapore's general attractiveness as a financial hub. But now that families are rooted in Singapore and they have been in Singapore for a while, they are looking at a longer term solution to think about, okay, how do I pass it on to my next generation? And how do I put into place structures to ensure that my legacy continues? So this is where the families have been focused on and where we see the market for family offices continue to develop.
What about you, Ying? What are the changes that you see in the family offices?
I think as a wealth growth across jurisdictions and the generations and the level of complexities that the families are dealing with also increase. They're dealing with multiple trusts, multiple entities, multiple family branches, relationship with different banks. They are also managing their operating businesses alongside their investment portfolio. So as a result, what used to be a simpler setup becomes much more harder to manage over time. And don't forget, I mentioned before, the needs to diversify across different jurisdictions and different asset classes. So I actually echo what Chun Wai shared earlier. Now, families increasingly require a clearer governance structures and oversights and better visibility over their assets and structures. Ultimately, it's about to ensure the structure can be operated smoothly across generations, regardless of who is involved.
In our previous episodes, we actually covered the high-profile AML cases. This has caused family offices to focus on governance, compliance, and also operational substance. So how has this changed the behavior or environment for family offices in Singapore?
Based on our observations, Singapore, remains very supportive of the family office space, but certainly the expectations around governance, transparency, and the operational substance has clearly increased. As you mentioned before, the major ML cases in 2025, where MAS imposed penalties amounting to 27.5 million in total over 9 financial institutions for breach of MAS, ML, and CFT requirements. We are seeing more rigorous expectation around source of wealth corroboration, customer due diligence, and transactions monitoring. And operationally, we also see the regulator are more hands-on. They are asking for supporting documents and additional clarifications for the filings that we submit. So the focus today is not just about putting in place the right structure. The regulator also wants to see that there is evidence the structure is being administered and managed properly in line with its stated purpose. So how about Chun Wai? Do you see the similar trend over at your end?
Yeah, we definitely see the regulators and a general infrastructure in Singapore ecosystem taking a more robust approach towards these checks and balances, making sure AML is done properly, making sure your KYC is done properly. And I think generally that's a good thing because to the families who are already in Singapore, it gives them the confidence that Singapore is taking this seriously. They want to make sure that they maintain the reputation as a reliable, credible financial hub. And they can be assured that the regulators are actively engaging the space. But beyond the families, it also gives third parties the confidence that the funds which are being managed from Singapore are documented properly, and these are legitimate family offices who are really interested in making the investments that they are interested in. So overall, it's definitely a positive development that we have seen come from the regulators and the general overall ecosystem in Singapore.
As family offices become more sophisticated, there are more operational risk. So what are the risks that you see today, Chun?
So as I mentioned, the families have looked more towards governance, operational resilience, and these are their response in putting into place governance policies or continuity policies are a reflection of the risk that they see and the risk that we see generally in the market. So the same risks apply, which is to ensure governance and succession for the next generation, to make sure that the families are not relying just on one person making the decision. The families have proper documented processes to know who is involved in making each decision that is required, and that there's also proper oversight and there's a responsibility taken by different family members in seeing through initiatives that are being pushed forward by the families. So because of this impetus that the families have, I think these are quite reflective of the risks that are involved in the general space that we have seen family offices operate towards.
All right, recently we've seen in Singapore family disputes regarding arrangements and also ownership disagreements. So Chun, what lessons do you take from these cases?
I think there's a need to have good governance, risk management, and oversight put in place. So family offices tend to operate on quite an informal basis, based on trust among family members, sometimes even amongst the employees that the family offices employ. But because a lot of these things are unspoken, unsaid rules, so there are certain lines which can be crossed or certain blurred lines which it's difficult for people to follow. And this could lead to disputes. So for example, I mean, it's not unheard of for disputes to arise in the context of family offices or governance of companies which families own. For instance, in 2025, Straits Times actually published an article talking about a high net worth individual, businessman, who was suing his former employees in Singapore over relating to certain investments made from his Singapore companies. So these disputes are certainly not far-fetched. And because of that, there's a need for these families to consider, okay, what kind of processes, checks and balances I can put into place, or who can I bring in to help manage this risk that may arise over time where the family office starts growing its business, starts becoming more complicated.
So how would you advise family offices to manage this risk?
One way is to, of course, put into place their governance procedures, but somebody still needs to oversee these governance procedures. Sometimes families might find it useful to engage a trusted group of professionals to assist with them coming up with these policies to put in place. Sometimes families might also engage with certain structures which, by their nature, have third-party independent persons looking at it. So one possible structure that families have been considering always is the use of a trust. I mean, in the use of a trust, you get a licensed third-party company who comes in and administers the trust structure, and this gives certain oversight over the family's assets and gives the families confidence that there is an independent party who is there to look after.
So, I mean, as a service provider, a lot of times the clients ask, should I set up a family office? Should I set up a trust? Quite interested to hear from you as a legal advisor who advises a lot of high net worth families. How do trust and family office work together?
Okay, so the trust and family office are structures that they can complement each other. They are not the same. So a trust really is a legal arrangement where the family places certain assets with someone they trust, a licensed trust company, to help them look after and manage those assets. But a family office, on the other hand, might serve a bigger role, a bigger purpose. The family office could provide concierge services to the family, can provide investment services to the family's funds, the office can also be a tool where the families gather other family members to be involved in some sort of decision making along the way, relating either to investments, maybe even philanthropy. So it is two different structures serving two different purposes, but often very complementary.
So back to Ying. So today, how does Ascentium help family offices operationalize these frameworks?
So I think one of the biggest challenges that we see that the family has is really bridging the gap between the structure that they put in place and how things actually run on a day-to-day basis. Now, in reality, sort of families are dealing with a few different parties. So they're dealing with the trustee, the corporate administrator, the banks and investment managers. Well, each of them are good at what they do, but things can be a bit fragmented from an operational standpoint. Now, for example, things like collections of KYC documents. Families are often asked for the same set of documents by a different provider, and it becomes quite repetitive. And over time, there are also questions around how are these information being handled and managed across different organizations, because certainly confidentiality and data securities are important to the family. Now, there is also coordinations around administrations and reporting, making sure that the trustee and the corporate administrator are aligned and the documents are consistent and the decisions are properly documented and reported. And because these sound straightforward, but in practice, they could be quite an effort when multiple parties are involved. Now, lastly is on the investment side. Now, we often hear the family says that they don't have a single consolidated view because the information sits across banks or investment managers. So what we often see is the structure itself is usually well thought through at the beginning, but the day-to-day running becomes complex as it grows. Now, at Ascentium Private, we have structured our offerings to provide solutions across a wide spectrum, from trust or equivalent holding structures to family office services. And the goal is really to bring things together, to facilitate better coordinations among different parties, provide clearer visibility, and also a more practical way of managing everything over time. Now, I would also like to highlight that we are ISO 27001 certified, which is an international recognized standard for information security. In a simple terms, it means that we have structured the processes and controls in place on how the client's data is being handled, stored, and also protected. Because in today's environment, this level of disciplines and securities has become increasingly important for the families.
All right, thank you. So as the landscape for family offices mature, what other trends do you see, Chun?
We see families asking more about philanthropy and charitable giving. So this is a maturing of the market, and they're seeing where they can also continue their legacy, continue involving the second generation sometimes in these efforts, and also to give back to society. This is also a trend which I think the government has recognized with the recognition of certain philanthropy schemes involving family offices. This is somewhere we clearly see the market moving forward in the future.
Then how do you advise the service provider like ourselves be prepared for this trend?
Okay, because philanthropy is an area where certain families might need guidance. So with charitable giving, philanthropy, you will need your governance policies to be in place. Somebody needs to advise the families on the governance policies. Somebody needs to help them oversee these policies. And that's where the service providers can come in and value add. Because service providers are the professionals. They will have the network of people who can support the families. They also have the network of people who might need the needs from the charitable and philanthropic giving. So this is where the service provider can value add directly to the family, but also in connecting and building these networks.
Thank you.
Yep. So a lot of discussion is also about the next generation. How do they go about preparing the next generation?
So the most successful families start early. They start by giving the younger generation participation in areas that they are interested in, while also building guidance and oversight so that they have a safe space to work within. But the key is to enable them and to let them build the capabilities up over time.
Another challenge, of course, is talent. So how do these family offices manage or attract talent, Ying?
I would say talent shortage is definitely a common theme. And with the Section 13O and 13U requirements where family offices are expected to recruit non-family members, professionals, it doesn't help or make things easier. It's not just about hiring, it's also about retaining the right people and building a sustainable team over time. I can't see an easy way to overcome that challenge. That's the reason why a lot of family offices are outsourcing their work and partnering with a provider like us. This gives them an opportunity to access institutional governance capabilities and also experienced professionals without having to build everything entirely in-house from day one.
Thank you. So last question, right? So how do you see the family office landscape in Singapore evolve in the next 5 years? So starting with Chun Wai.
So I think we'll continue to see greater sophistication in the family offices. For example, in terms of governance and oversight policies. We will also see succession coming to a fore, where the generation that sets up a family office is now considering how to involve and pass on the reins to the next generation.
For me, I think the changes will be driven by technology. Because with the continued development of AI, we are seeing shift across many aspects of the family office landscape. Just for example, before the iPhone was being introduced, your life is quite fragmented, and now your life is being managed out of a phone. So from a family's perspective, the expectations are also evolving. Now, there is a growing trend for better technology-enabled oversight. They are expecting consolidated visibility over different structures, over different assets, and also an institutional quality reporting. As a service provider like ourselves, if we leverage technology effectively, we can streamline the more administrative aspect of the work and focus on providing high value added services such as implementing and monitoring governance, oversight, advisory, in supporting families in making complex decisions over the time.
Right, thank you, Ying, and also thank you, Chun Wai. For those watching us, thank you for watching us live. There are a few questions that came in, so we'll quickly go through these questions now. So the first question, I believe is for Chun Wai, is from Jonathan. So Jonathan asks, how do you involve the next generation without giving them too much control too early?
One way to involve them is the use of committees. So the second generation can take part in certain committees that they are interested in, be it investments or philanthropy or education, where it's a bit more hived off in a specific area. They can come up, what we have seen being done is for these second generation participants to put forward proposals which are then vetted and approved or discussed with an ultimate decision maker who could be from the first generation. So this is one way for the second generation to have a safe space to put forward their ideas and to participate in the family's operations.
Right. The next question we have from Emily. So this is a question about what we mentioned just now, trust. So what is the difference between a trust and a family office, or do you do both? Right. So I'll ask Ying about this.
As a service provider in Ascentium, we provide trust and family office services. Now, trust is a legal arrangement, and the purpose is mainly to preserve wealth and protect the assets. Now, family office, I would say, serve a different functions altogether. And family office is where a lot of decisions are being consolidated and made by the people who are recruited by the family office. So investment decision could be one of them. And also sometimes it's about managing the family affair as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. The trust is a structure where you hive off, you separate some assets to be managed in a certain way by the family and with the oversight of a trusted fiduciary, a trust company. The family office can interact with a trust by, for example, investment decisions. It can be communicated through an investment advisor in the trust. But these actually serve somewhat different purposes, although they certainly complement each other.
So last question here from Emily. So we talk about key person dependency as a risk. What's the first step to fix that?
From what I've seen, the most important first step to take is to identify a successor or a group of successors. That is often the most difficult decision to make. And once we have done that, identify a successor, then we can put into place plans to how to train the successor, how to groom the successor to take over the key decision maker. And we can put into place governance policies that will ensure that the successor is empowered to make decisions that he or she needs to make in order to drive the family forward. So that's where I see the key decision point to be made at.
I totally agree with what Chun just mentions. I think we have a framework, and thereafter is implementing the framework and also continuously ensuring the governance oversights are being monitored and having a succession plan put in place for key decision-making roles. Yeah.
Right, thank you, Ying. Thank you so much for your questions. So today's episode is brought to you by Ascentium. So today's conversation highlights not just, creating structures, but preparing the next generation, sustainable governance, and also building institutional resilience. So thank you everyone for joining us. We hope you find this session valuable.